In this episode, we're talking about a fantastic fantasy spiritual successor to Disco Elysium, a trip to Toronto, demon-slaying shrine maidens, and a cozy game that keeps you as its deep, dark secret. All this and more on Indie Game Arcade. Welcome back to Indie Game Arcade, a podcast that deep dives into the latest and greatest indie games. I'm your wayward cleric with zero sense of direction. My name's Chris, and unfortunately I am flying solo in this episode while Joseph is out filming a movie in LA. Can't tell you much about it yet, but we'll divulge more when we can. We do stuff sometimes, believe it or not. He's been in a few movies in the past, like VFW, Puppet Master, Dr. Death. That's all one title. That's literally a thing. He actually made like the little voices for the puppet. I think he's uncredited in that one, but he's there. Like I myself, I've been in several animated films. I was in a cool analog horror series called the Greylock Tapes, and more indie games than I can even remember. I say all this not to humble brag or anything, but just because I know a lot of indie devs end up listening to this show, you hungry indie devs out there need actors for your stuff. We have a lot of experience, so let us know what kind of stuff you need. We'll work something out. And now with all that said, it probably will be a little bit of a shorter episode than you're used to, but hey, that means you can get back to your day, stop listening to me, and go play some cool-ass indie games. But first off, we are going to start with the game Esoteric Ebb.
Game start!
So Esoteric Ebb was developed by Christopher Beauregard and published by Raw Fury. I did not realize originally that it was actually a solo dev, which makes this game all the more impressive because there is so much to it. And now I'm wondering, how long did it take this dev to develop this game? I'm going to have to look into that. But if you don't already know, this is a single-player CRPG that is very much inspired by things like Dungeons & Dragons and also very obviously Disco Elysium. Now, I am going to go ahead and show my hand here and tell you that I have not played Disco Elysium. It's one of those like 900-something games that have been stuck in my backlog forever. You know what I have played, though? I have played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons and Dungeons & Dragons related things. I'm going to say D&D now because that's a mouthful. You'll definitely see all the influence pretty often throughout the game. Even with like some of the art will be reminiscent of a lot of the handbooks and stuff and the modules and everything that you can get. It's fantastic. It also uses all the same sort of stat blocks and everything, like to a T: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. With the same sort of like bonus modifiers. It uses all of the same sort of rules as D&D 5e. For the uninitiated, that is the 5th edition rule set of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm getting really deep into the nerd stuff here. If you haven't played D&D, you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about? There's been all kinds of editions of D&D. That's the best way to explain it. The 5th edition rule set is the most popular and the most widely used at this time. So this game takes a lot of inspiration from that specific rule set and uses it in its own game. One thing that is absolutely clear, though, is that this game feels like a genuine D&D campaign. And I say that because it sticks within the bounds of the rules that it establishes. It is a world that has all these fantasy creatures and stuff, but still includes a few things from like modern society, like bicycles. If you haven't had that experience, every DM does things differently. The first campaign that I did, I'm going to just stick with stuff that people could go back and listen to if they want. So I'll use the stuff that we did podcasts on, our actual play podcast, Party in Peril. That first campaign, when I took over as DM, was very strictly fantasy. There was no other stuff really pulled into it, even though there were nods here and there. Whereas in our second campaign, there would be little flavor things pulled in there because it was a lot more of a goofy, lighthearted thing. Our characters were villains and part of basically like a company, still in a fantasy setting, but they were like part of this guild that essentially had a hierarchy like a business with a CEO of villainy, and that's how they were kind of run. Essentially, it pulled in a lot of things like that, like jokes for office humor and those kinds of things. And this game does a lot of that sort of humor. I know that was a very long tangent of me to go on, but that is the best approximation that I can go from. One of the most unique aspects about this game, and the thing that I like the most about it, is that each of your aspects that I talked about earlier, and I mean as far as your ability traits, those 6, they're all a part of the inner dialogue within your head. So in D&D, again, if you're not familiar, you often do ability checks. If you want to do a certain thing, or you want to ask your DM a certain question about like, hey, do I recognize the significance of this object? He might say, okay, do a history check, which is going to be your wisdom or your intelligence or something, and you'll roll your die and add any modifiers you might have to that, which is like has to do with how many points you have put into that stat. That all happens in this game as well, but those aspects all have their own personalities, and they will talk to you and kind of give you advice or just say goofy things to you based on like how you rolled. So depending on like how your stats are laid out, your inner monologue is going to be shaped by that kind of stuff. And it can be very, very funny at times. You are always a cleric, like that just is your character. You play a cleric who was killed and brought back to life, and you have to find out why. That's going to be part of like the overall mystery of everything. And you are trying to solve a crime just a few days before the very first democratic election in this world. With all that going on, even though you are specifically a cleric, you are having these arrays of stats assigned to you that are going to make you better at certain things and worse at certain things. I went with things that are very typical of a class that's like a rogue. So very, very high charisma and very, very high dexterity, which meant I was very good at manipulating things. I was very good at being stealthy about things. I was also very confident and very good at talking my way in and out of situations. But it also meant that I couldn't be proficient in other areas. And the areas I chose not to be proficient in, because I thought it would be very funny, was intelligence and wisdom. So I put some more points into strength and constitution to make sure like my body was like, you know, decent. I could do a few strong things. I could take some hits. I could take some damage here and there. But I was basically an oaf. Like I'm kind of an idiot and a blowhard because I have all this confidence, but I have no brain power to back that up. And that made for so many funny instances, you know, being in a conversation, talking to someone, and then I'm trying to get some sort of insight on their motivations, and my wisdom or something will talk to me and very obviously say something funny along the lines of just the wildest guess that is very obviously wrong in this situation, but you don't have any clue as to what would be right. And you're really just relying on your own arrogance, your charisma to guide you through everything. And that was very, very fun and unique, and an experience that I have not run into in another game like this. Now, someone might say, hey, but that's the whole thing of Disco Elysium. Cool. I don't know that because, again, I never played it, and maybe I should because I had a really great time with this system and need more of it. Now, Joseph did leave me notes about all the games that he played, and he said that he went mostly strength and dexterity for this one. So he had a really tough guy and went for a very like manly man kind of persona is what he said, trying to play to his literal strength. And as far as his experiences went, he said that his strength helped him survive quite a bit, though he did eat some very bad apples at one time. And I guess that almost took him out, but it helped him survive. He did die, though. He was killed by a gelatinous cube at some point. I will say I did die as well, mainly because I kept trying to wake this griffin that was sleeping. And every time I tried to wake him, he'd slap me and I'd go flying across the map. And eventually my luck ran out and I did die in a very satisfying way of just like scorpioning like halfway across the city when I landed and just being dead. And that was just funny. That's just fun. And I mean, the game sort of save scums for you. Like, you know, it has auto save points and stuff like that. So you can always hop back in and reload and whatever and try again. But it's just fun that way. I really enjoyed it. One thing that I do have a criticism for, and let me take that back. Not a criticism. I think it's more of a criticism on myself and maybe a little bit of insight into where modern games are, because you get a lot of quests in this game, like a lot of quests. And you will be presented with like a screen in your menu and stuff where you can see all of your quests. But there are no map markers or anything, no quest markers to tell you where you need to go to further those quests or complete those quests. None whatsoever. So you are really having to rely on just what is in the text of those quests to figure out where you need to go, or just some pure luck and hoping that you stumble across where it is. And there are no super detailed maps either, more of just kind of an overview of the areas of the city and sort of the general ideas of certain spots. But it's not like you can drill down and see exactly where certain people are or anything like that. That does not exist in this game, which is fairly unique because almost any other game like this has very, very detailed maps, very, very detailed quest markers so that you know exactly, or at least a general area of where things are. And I think that that is really interesting from a standpoint of, I found myself getting frustrated a few times because I'm like, oh man, I really want to find this freaking lost paladin guy. I don't know where the heck he is. And I would be like, I'm running out of places to look for him, at least initially, and thinking, man, I really wish I had something pointing me to, you know, where I need to go. However, this was obviously a design choice made by the developers to not include those things because they want you to wander around. They want you to explore. They don't want you to go from A to B to B to C because that takes out all of these other things that you might run into. Because in my search trying to find this one guy, I run into all of these other silly things or interesting things that I would not have found otherwise, like a random nest on the side of this wall that I decide, you know what, I'm going to try to scale down this wall, see if I can get to those eggs. And I ended up doing it, and I ended up finding a trinket for it. Or randomly finding this pipe that I'm like, I wonder if I can squeeze down there. And I try to convince my goblin friend to do it, and he won't do it. So I try to squeeze down there, and it takes me to this area that I hadn't been to before. And I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't been just aimlessly wandering, not knowing, you know, where my next path is supposed to be. So I think it's one of those cases of like modern gaming kind of has ruined me a little bit and my idea of my sense of exploration. And because back in the day when I was a kid, they didn't have quest markers and stuff. That was something that I didn't even really experience until the days of World of Warcraft. And that was in the 2000s, early 2000s. And I know some people are like, yeah, that was when I was a kid. I was basically an adult by that point. Okay, now I feel old. But anyway, going to say that I don't think they should add those things at this point. I think it's good without it. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. The art in this game is absolutely gorgeous. The characters are so incredibly quirky, and there's just so many things to uncover. In fact, it is so interesting from a standpoint of I played so much of it, so many hours, and then I was just like, I'm really curious to see where other people are at. And I would check videos of people and see like how they are going in their journey. And almost unanimously, every video I would check, like 2 hours in, they haven't even left the starting house that you wake up in because there's just so many things to look at and tinker with and mess with. It's almost unfathomable to me. You've spent 2 hours in this game and you haven't even left the house that you originally woke up in when there is so much other stuff outside of this house. But that just shows you like how much stuff there is in this. So this was definitely a game that was a huge labor of love, and it's paying off because it has overwhelmingly positive reviews. And I think it's just going to keep going up and up and up, and definitely a game that we're going to be hearing more about when it gets closer to Game of the Year stuff at the end of 2026. So it's going to be an interesting year in that regard. So let's move on to our next game that I actually struggled with a little bit, and I think that's probably going to surprise you when you hear what it is, because that is Scott Pilgrim X, and it is X like EX, not just an X. Get it? Because evil X's, you know? You get it. You get it. Anyway, this was developed and published by Tribute Games. Tribute Games is that game studio that does, they get hired a lot by specific folks to create games of like existing IPs. Like they make their own stuff and they've done quite a bit of that. TMNT Shredder's Revenge was created by them. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, which we just talked about a couple months ago, was also Tribute Games. So their latest is Scott Pilgrim that they are working on. Worked on. It is now out. It feels very true to what you would expect from Scott Pilgrim. The art style is so incredibly good. It is a beautiful game in that regard. I love the pixel art design of everything. They look like they jumped straight out of a Brian Lee O'Malley comic. Absolutely love the style of everything. The music is so good. Once again, like the last Scott Pilgrim game, they brought back Anna Monoguchi, who also did a little bit of music for the movie as well. And that was just such a great idea to bring them back because like it's unmatched. They are unmatched in that chiptune rock hybrid kind of space. Like, I don't think there's anyone nearly as good. I absolutely love them. Fun tidbit, a long time ago, with me and Joseph's first podcast together, we originally had some conversations with Anna Monoguchi for a theme song, but it was too much money for us at the time, so we had to pass, and we ended up getting a deal with Slime Girls instead for a theme song that came about halfway through the life of that show. So shout out to Slime Girls. Love you. I think it's just one guy. It's not a bunch of girls made of slime. But hey, it's a cool name. First of all, I'm going to tell you what Joseph left in his notes about it. He said that he really enjoyed his time with it. He felt like it was relatively easy. Of course he did, because it's Joseph and every game is easy to him. He does point out that he really enjoyed you could pick up pretty much any item and use it as a weapon, and that more beat 'em ups should do that. And I 100% agree with that. Just about anything is something that can be used as a weapon, and that felt really good. And it really made for a lot of interesting fights, especially when there would be times where you're just getting flooded with enemies. I mean, all over the place. Having a lot of weapons at your disposal was great because it wouldn't be just like one or two things here and there. You might be in a level and there's like literally 8 or 10 rocks on the ground, plus a couple beach balls, plus a couple volleyballs or a pipe or something else. And it's just, there's so many things at your disposal that you can use. That felt incredibly good. He also wanted to say that he really enjoyed the fight with this boss cave woman, Roxy. Here's a few things that I want to say about it. I do enjoy the combat for the most part. Something that I struggled with the combat, though, and this is something that I struggled with a lot with Marvel Cosmic Invasion 2 that Joseph didn't have as much of a problem with. But for me, it felt like the amount of things that you could do per character just wasn't enough. And even like comparing to one of Tribute Games' other games and talking about Shredder's Revenge, I felt like in that game, there was just a lot more available that you could do as a character, no matter what character you were. Whereas in this and in Cosmic Invasion, it really comes down to being different characters. Like if you want any variety, you just have to be a different character. However, whereas in Cosmic Invasion, you have that luxury of being able to choose different characters often and also being able to like switch back and forth pretty easily, you're basically kind of punished for playing other characters in this game from the standpoint of like the game economy. So like if you buy any stat boosting items and stuff like that, that is always going to be very specific to that character, the character that bought them, because they're items that are equipped. So like if you are buying something and putting them on a character and you swap that character mid-run, one, that character does not level, so there's not shared XP or anything. So that character is going to be severely underleveled and they're not going to have any of the stat boosts or anything that you already paid for. So it's like you're not going to want to swap those characters. And if you do, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage. That is annoying and very frustrating to me, especially for a game that I was very excited for. The other thing that I just want to criticize real quick is that there is a ton of backtracking in this game because it's not laid out like a typical brawler where you're just going left to right, left to right, left to right, and progressing through the story. Here, instead, it functions almost like an RPG. And I like that idea in theory, but in practice, maybe not as much as I thought I would. Because here you are doing your left to right thing, but then you have to go to this one point and maybe talk to these people who say, hey, I need you to go see this person over here and get some bombs and bring it back and blow this thing up. And you're like, cool, I'll do that. So then you got to leave and then you are back in the area you just were a little bit ago and you have to refight those characters or those enemies. You go over to the park where you need to go to get those bombs. You fight those characters. You get those bombs. You come back. Well, you are now back in that other area. Now you got to fight all those characters all over again. The amount of backtracking and having to refight all these things just, it gets old after a while of just doing the same thing over and over again. And that never stops because those levels, if you want to call them that, are severely small. It's not like long screens or anything like in a traditional beat 'em up. You are just going through like 2 city blocks or something, and then you go to the next place. So it's just like this constant need to refight all of the same enemies over and over again. So that just really wore on me after a while. One thing I do like is the theme of this one. They're going with a very like Sonic kind of idea here, which was kind of fun. I know some people are a little miffed right now, not because of that, but like lore nerds are a little miffed. Me being a lore nerd, I'm not really that bothered by it. But there's some frustration I've seen online with the idea of what is like, you know, the canon of all of this. Because there was that animated show on Netflix, and in addition to this game, there was also a tie-in comic that came out, just a really short one. And that comic essentially throws out the animated series and says, like, it's not canon, but that this comic and this game are canon to what is the original book series by Brian Lee O'Malley. So things are a little all over the place in that regard, and I know that that's got a few people frustrated. I'm not too bothered by it, but thought it worth mentioning. I do like the idea of Metal Scott, but I think it's kind of weird in the idea that the game starts with just, you know, Metal Scott showing up and being like, oh, he's back. And it's like, wait, what do you mean he's back? And I thought that was sort of like a joke kind of thing, but it's not, because he showed up in this comic that I didn't even know existed before I played the game. So it's kind of like if that was sort of like homework before you played the game, I don't think they did a very good job of like tying the two together. Did not know this tie-in comic existed whatsoever until I was reading about the frustrations of players and stuff online and seeing that and being like, wait, what? That's where Metal Scott came from? Okay. I've also seen that a lot of actual real life vegans are getting upset about the vegan joke thing and beating up all the vegans, and that joke has definitely run its course. I'm not a vegan. I can't speak to that. I don't know, but I can understand where that's coming from, because if it was turned the other way where it was like making fun of like indie gamers or something, and you had to beat up indie game players or indie devs or something constantly, and that was always the thing, I'd be like, all right, yeah, I guess I kind of get it. I don't know, maybe, but I know that that's been a little bit of a turnoff for some people. I don't have a horse in that race. Overall, though, I think that it's still an enjoyable game for what it is. Those frustrations aside, I think it's just one of those ones where I will probably play it here and there, but because of the frustrations in it, I don't feel compelled to like sit down and like sink a lot of time into it right now. Whereas there's other games that are way more frictionless that I'm like, yeah, I'd rather spend my time here and then maybe come back to this and see in a few months or weeks or something, did they make any quality of life improvements? You know, take that for what it is. Everybody's mileage is going to be different with this one. I love the world. I love the art, the music, everything else. But for me right now, I'm going to have to wait.
Power up!
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Do me a favor. Throw us a like, a follow, share the episode or the podcast with folks who love indie games because I want to get more of these game recommendations out there and support indie game devs. As you all know, we also have a YouTube channel over at youtube.com/nerdsloth where you can catch us playing more indie games or check out our top 10 series for even more indie game recommendations because we believe there's an indie game out there for everyone.
Get ready!
Let's keep talking about indie games that we played this week. The next one is Homura Hime. This is a 3D anime-style action game, very much in the vein of, it's like a big adventure game, but also with like Sekiro-style parrying. This was developed by Crimson Dusk, published by Playism. The easiest way I can describe this, and I think I described it to somebody else recently, is that this makes me feel like I am within the Demon Slayer world. Very different story than that, but like the look of everything, the art style, the characters, especially like the enemy designs and stuff for some of the demons that you encounter, man, it is so incredibly good. I was kind of taken back by just how polished and amazing this looks. I honestly just was not prepared for it. Obviously, Joseph is the one that usually talks at length about the gameplay systems and everything at work. He's way better at descriptions of that stuff, but I do have a few notes from him. So he wanted me to tell you, so lucky you, that for one, he loves the anime art style, and he found it was an extremely enjoyable flow to the combat with very easy to read enemy tells. That I will 100% agree with. And that made it very, very fun for me as somebody that doesn't have the same kind of twitch reflexes when it comes to action games like Joseph does. But because the enemy tells were so good, I had a great time playing this game because for the maybe first time ever, I was able to parry, and I was able to parry a lot. It just got harder and harder as you get into some of like the boss battles and stuff because there was so much going on. More about that in just a second. But like when you're getting to like the regular enemy fights and stuff, those parries were like so forgiving, but still felt really good to pull off. Like I felt like if I can pull those off, maybe I can play Sekiro one day. Probably not. However, that does bring up one thing that I wanted to talk about. In addition to those, the cooldowns of things were very aggressive, and I mean that in a good way. Like, there's no passive timers or anything for like your special attacks or your special moves and stuff. It just all recharges by doing those parries or by being very aggressive with attacking, which was fantastic because that meant the more that you were on top of the enemies, the more aggressive you were as a player, then the more damage you could do because you could keep doing those special attacks. That's not something I felt like I was very used to. And I found that I was able to hold my own, especially in boss battles, way more than I expected to be. Now, I might have a little bit of a skewed vision then of just how easy or tough this game is because, one, I was able to do better in this game than usual because of the gameplay systems here. But two, also because Joseph, who is very excellent at these kind of games, says it felt pretty easy, felt pretty chill, not super challenging, but a fun time. Of course he said that. I swear to God, like he would probably be like one of those people that's like, yeah, you know, Elden Ring's pretty chill, you know, not too challenging, not too tough. Actually, at this point, he probably would say that, to be honest, but it is what it is. One thing I didn't care for about this game, though, is the aerial traversal. Everything else about this game I felt was so solid and just really tight and controlled. Like, I felt playing my character, I felt like I had so much control over her movement at all times until she was kind of up in the air on platforms. There is a time, like very, very quick into the game, that you are up on platforms and having to move like through the air and stuff. Some of the attacks that you do kind of propel you a little bit forward. So if you're fighting up there, you got to be very careful because it will propel you right off of the edge and you will fall to your death very quickly. Luckily, it doesn't really like punish you for that much. It really just kind of sets you right back on there. It just sort of breaks your flow, your progress a little bit. But the other thing is you have to do a lot of vertical propulsion. And in lieu of having something like a hook shot or something, which I feel like to me seems like a no-brainer for a game like this, like that is something that they would have as a shrine maiden, which I guess I never said that that's what you are. You are like a shrine maiden who, with the help of like a little sidekick named Anne, you are cleansing demons from this area because they have broken through a barrier and trying to figure out how they did that, what's going on exactly. And there's like a bunch of other folks that have kind of gone missing in the chaos of all of that and sort of figuring out where they went. That leads you down like a little hole that leads you into like a demon realm, which is sort of a reflection of our world, but with like, it's a little bit more broken up and there's a big old bone dragon just snaking his way like through all of the clouds and stuff. And you are hopping from platform to platform, kind of getting a look at everything and seeing these other, not shrine maidens, but I can't remember what they are, but sort of like guards and stuff. And they're all asleep at different points and just kind of seeing where everything is and what's going on. But you're having to like grapple to these like lanterns and stuff up in the air a lot. And sometimes it's like you have to do a jump and a dash like way out into the middle of nowhere and then try to hit like on controller, like RB at the right point while aiming up at one of those lanterns to be able to propel yourself up there. But it's not like there's a grapple, like a physical thing that your character's using. It just sort of like jumps her up there. That to me, whereas everything else felt more tactile and felt like there was meaning for it, felt kind of sloppy and also did not feel nearly as precise as everything else. In a game where you are doing lots of parries and you have like a specific thing for breaking shields and you have a lot of control over your movement and this really, really good dash. Just this felt completely unrealized, I guess, in a way of like, this might be a good idea. We should do this. But like, it felt unfinished as a part of your moveset. I didn't enjoy that part of it. And there was a lot of it really early on in the game. But it was like, once I got past that, everything else about this game was extremely fun and way more fun than I expected it to be. It's definitely a game that I want to keep playing more of, especially getting into more of the boss fights, because those are so good, so intense. They're not just sort of arena battles per se, but also 3D bullet hells at the same time, because they are not only attacking you, but they are shooting like energy beams and these energy balls in tons and tons of patterns all at the same time. And you were having to dodge all over the place and parry and jump in and dash and do all kinds of damage and combos. And it gets nuts in the best way possible. So this is definitely a game that I would recommend for folks to pick up. If you like the art style, especially like this sort of anime inspired look, or like characters that just, you know, feel like they're fresh out of an anime. It definitely feels like this belongs to a show or something. I know it doesn't, but it feels like it should. Also, protect Anne at all costs. She's adorable. So definitely a game worth checking out. On to our very last game. This is a game that only I played, so I get to say whatever I want now. This is a game that just came out of early access, and it is called Shinehill. This was developed and published by Peach Bite, which is a duo team of a husband and wife that created this game. This is a subversive take on the Stardew Valley, like farming sim cozy sort of thing. in such a cool way. And it is honestly the best spin on the genre I have seen yet. And I say that because you're basically the bad guy. You're not just like some peaceful villager doing this farm to contribute to this village and find romance or something like that. You are actually part of an alien, a very capitalist alien race that gets sent down specifically to this planet, to the world, to sort of like spy and figure out, is this planet worth terraforming basically for your own race? So you're actually there in disguise. You're wearing like this very elaborate, like human sort of suit. But whereas you were trying to stay on the outskirts, you crash, you get flung out of your ship actually. So the rest of the village that you land in has not seen your ship. They just find you and nurse you back to health. And they're basically like, oh, you must be the newcomer we've been expecting. Here's the farm and everything. That is very funny in this idea of mistaken identity. They have that name for you, which I, for whatever reason, already have forgotten. I know it starts with an R. I'm going to say Rue. I don't remember, but we'll call you Rue. And they're basically like, here's the farm. Come meet this person to get tools and everything. And they just really set you up for success, having no idea that, one, you are not the person who has bought this farm, and in fact are someone from a completely different race. And we're actually sent there to see if that place needs to be conquered. So you're there doing all the Stardew Valley sort of things, farming, cleaning things up, doing some dungeon crawling, all the stuff that you would expect, plus tons and tons of mini games, and getting to know all the townspeople and developing some of those relationships and stuff. With this idea in the back of your head, just knowing that you are actually, you're a spy. You're the bad guy. You're going to eventually do irreparable damage, possibly, to this planet and all of these people. And that is absolutely fascinating to me. It creates this idea of a very anti-capitalist type game by making you a capitalist, a very evil capitalist. And the idea of like, hey, are you going to change your ways? Who knows? I only played so far, so I haven't seen the full story all the way through. Though this does have an ending, unlike some of the other games in this kind of genre like Stardew, which you could sink 300 hours into and come to find out that this game will never end. This one's like 15 to 20 hours, I believe, of story. There's also like these quality of life things that I really appreciate about this one too. I mentioned that there's a lot of mini games. However, the amount of mini games, I guess, was bugging a lot of people. So they did add this feature where you can turn the mini games off and then just complete the thing. So like one of the mini games is to catch crabs. You're on the beach, you want to catch a crab. It becomes like this almost like tic-tac-toe kind of puzzle thing of you have sort of a grid and there's the crab. You have to block the crab within a grid of these, blocks. And every time you place a block in one direction, the crab's going to walk the other direction. So you're just placing all the blocks, trying to, anticipate, well, where's the crab going to move next? I got to put one there, and then he's going to move this way. I got to put one there next. And trying to like trap him. And when you get him all the way trapped in to where he has nowhere to go, that's when you catch the crab. Since that would be every time you want to catch a crab, and this is just, one example of one of many, many games, that was getting on people's nerves. They added a thing to turn that off, and you just click crab, you catch crab. So very cool. Also, again, like some of the other things, you can do a lot of dungeon crawling and stuff to get certain things out of mines or whatever. And they did add a feature where you can turn off taking any damage specifically for stuff like that. Like if you actually want a cozy experience, because a lot of these games, when they say cozy, it's not really cozy, is it? Because you're doing so much work and you can die. Here they're like, okay, yeah, let's actually make it cozy. You won't get damaged. It's fine. You can turn it off if you want. That's really interesting. I probably wouldn't turn that off myself just because I'm interested in that kind of thing to, see what happens if I got killed in this game as this alien in the skin suit. I have no idea. I didn't die yet, but I'm interested to see what happens. But if you do want just a pure cozy experience, they've thought of that and they have it for you. So overall, I think this is a really, really interesting game. The time I've put into it so far, I've very, very much enjoyed. Although I do feel bad about clubbing some of those porcupines to get their quills.
Final round!
And here we are into our final round. Here's a few other games that I also played. Eternal Afternoon, Cupid Claw, Lost and Found, and Planet of Lana 2, all of which will have reviews over on our YouTube channel, so you can head over there and read about those in the community post section. Once again, I know that it's kind of weird, the idea of reading things on YouTube, but again, that is a feature and we are trying to make the most of it at this point. So head over there, you can read all about that stuff and what I thought of those games. Also, you will probably realize there was a very big release this past week that we didn't talk about, which is Slay the Spire II. That's just because it came out in early access, and we usually don't talk about early access games. However, we did buy it, we do want to play it, but that is a game that, one, I want to make sure Joseph is here before we talk about it, and two, we want to spend enough time in it to verify that it is enough of a finished version of the game to talk about it before it gets out of early access, or see if we want to just wait until it comes completely out. So far, it kind of seems like most of the things are there aside from the ending of the game has not been added yet, and there is going to be a true ending this time. But other than that, it seems like it might be quality of life adjustments and things. So we're going to spend some time in it. We'll see if we bring that next week. I'm not sure because we do have quite a few games that we want to play for next week. Two of which that I'm very excited for are Shuffles and Scuffles. The dev did send us a key for that, and we have talked to this dev on and off for quite a while, so I'm very excited for them to come back and talk with them some more, and then get to play their game for the full release. The other one is Rel, Warped Worlds, and Troubled Times. I just talked about them a little bit on our TikTok channel the other day. This is a crazy, crazy cool puzzle game with an unfathomable amount of combinations of spells that you can do. You'll hear more about it next week because I am going to talk about that. Joseph also wanted me to mention that he played the game Yap Yap with Callie, and he wanted me to just kind of tell you real quick about his experience there. So Yap Yap is an online multiplayer co-op horror game where you and a bunch of friends are like these minions that belong to a specific wizard, and you're tasked with breaking into your master's rival's wizard tower and basically just sabotaging everything. So just trying to ruin either like the tower or break some of the concentration of him and the spells and stuff that he's doing. But that tower is also full of like different beasts and monsters and things, like trying to protect it all. So just super goofy. And the big stick is that you are using your voice to cast spells. And it's just pure chaos, essentially. This was a game that I had posted on social media about like months ago. And he finally got to play it with Callie and just said, hey, it's weird as hell. But he specifically wrote that he has not laughed this hard in a game for a very, very long time. And says, if we did ratings, it would be a 10 out of 10. And that he recommends the Snot plus Hiss Wand. There's that. There's that.
Game over.
Hey, I hope you had a good time listening to this episode. I know it was a lot weirder just being me, but I hope that you still got some value in it and had a good time. If you did enjoy it, please stick around and listen to the bumper and hear about how you can help support the show and all the things we do here at Nerd Sloth Creative. You can check the show notes for our link tree, which is going to take you to our social media, Discord, our merch store, tons of other cool stuff. Join our Discord so we can talk. We're a lot more chill in there. We've got a lot of people in there that really love indie games, as well as lots of other stuff. We talk about movies and horror and comic books and music and all kinds of things. So hop in there and just get in touch with us and let's talk. You should also get in touch with us and just let us know what indie games you're playing so you can help us elevate these games and we can help support indie game developers together. But that's game over for me. My name's Chris, and I'll continue on the next episode.
Continue.
Indie Game Arcade is recorded and produced by Nerd Sloth Creative. If you're looking for more gaming content, head over to youtube.com/nerdsloth for indie game let's plays and recommendations. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/nerdsloth, where you can select a pledge and receive access to hundreds of hours of bonus content from everything at Nerd Sloth Creative. If you're an indie game developer and would like us to review your game or explore other opportunities, send an email to nerdslothcreative@gmail.com with the subject line Indie Game Arcade. Thanks for listening, and keep supporting indie game devs.